Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it. And that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. All right. Good evening, Shane.
How's it going?
Oh, it's been a week. It's been a week. Just bouncing back from shutting the whole works down, and it's very busy, which I expected, but it's also been a lot of problems, and I don't know, maybe it's just the normal amount of problems plus that much extra from last week, so it just seems like a lot. Like everywhere I turn, I've got another issue that we've got to spend 2 hours in order to fix, some software that doesn't work, or, this is a used module that we've never done, or it's been fun. So,
oh man. Yeah. It's just, I guess, part of what you sign up for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I got exactly what I asked for. So there's no complaining.
Hey, well, I really appreciate you having me on the show, Sean.
Yeah. Well, where are you from for the listeners?
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm based kind of out of the greater Charlotte area, North Carolina.
Okay.
Charlotte's a weird city. For those who aren't familiar, it's very much you work in the city, you live in the country kind of a place.
Okay.
We live actually just kind of northwest of Charlotte, little town, Iron Station, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, I was just out that way for ASTA, and then after my girlfriend and I, we went out to the coast to Wilmington and got an Airbnb on the beach, which was pretty cool. Just relaxed for a few days and hung out, and we really lucked out with the way the weather worked out. But the area that we were in down there is like the natural growing area for Venus flytraps, and I find those fascinating. So we went to like a sanctuary where it was all carnivorous plants, the pitcher ones and the sundews and the Venus flytraps, and I'd never seen so many in person like that. So when I came home, I bought one, so I have one in the kitchen growing right now.
Have you tried feeding it anything yet?
I did, yeah. I gave it a fly, so that was the highlight of my day when I did that. So
that's pretty wild, though.
It is. It's crazy. It's a plant, and it just. But it requires a little extra care. I've got a few other house plants, but it's definitely a little bit extra because you can't give it normal tap water and you can't have it in normal dirt and all that stuff. Okay. But it's pretty cool.
I definitely do not have a green thumb. I don't know if one would last long with me.
Well, yeah. So what do you do out there in Charlotte as far as the automotive world goes?
Oh man, I've been kind of all over the place. So I was working, full time as a tech at a shop, and I've been doing that for, getting close to 20 years. And very recently, I decided to kind of do my own thing. So I'm doing the mobile thing now. The programming, the diagnostics, the keys, the mobilizer type stuff.
All right.
I'm on week number 3 of doing this, and it's been really fun and really a lot of work.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I mean, because you're nerve-wracked. you know, especially if it's your first time going out on your own. I assume it is.
It is, yes.
Yeah, and so you're just like, oh man, I'm not a W-2 employee anymore. I don't have a
Yeah.
paycheck
Yeah, it feels like being
necessarily coming
unemployed.
in. Yeah, right, right. It does until it doesn't.
Yeah.
We spoke the other day. Is like eventually it feels normal, but for a period of time, it's just like you're you're going out with no safety net, right? And you're just like, oh man, this is so crazy. And then eventually it just feels like normal life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a fun period. I enjoyed that jump when I took it. Finally, it was pretty cool. What led you to that? Like what about it attracted you, or what about the normal technician life that pushed you away from that?
So yeah, really, it's just I've always really loved the diagnostic side of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been blessed to work at some actually really good shops, and I'm picky about where I work. I know pretty quickly if I'm not a fit for a place, and I'll leave pretty quickly. But I've been blessed to
Okay.
work at some good shops. But it's just the normal shop atmosphere. It's still just a lot of slinging parts kind of stuff. And you get to dig into some diag stuff, but I just got to the point in my career that I really wanted to just focus on learning as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know this side of the industry existed for, it's been until, probably a couple of years ago. And it was actually your podcast that I found and I started listening to. And it just like something just clicked in my head. And I was like, okay, I didn't know this was a thing,
Right. People pay for this.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I knew that I've worked at shops that have guys come out and program modules, right? So I knew that was I guess the diag side of it. I was just impressed by some of these people. I've started just watching on YouTube or listening to their podcasts. Just like, man, like these guys are brilliant. I've never worked with someone in a shop like this. So that's what attracted me, was just the kind of the people that I've just encountered, just the
Mm-hmm.
mindset of the folks doing it, it's just different.
Yeah. I mean, same thing for me. It was, I had no idea that this was a career path for me, or I probably would have jumped or attempted to get into it sooner, even if it was, being employed by another mobile company. But I didn't even know. I mean, I didn't even know the mobile programming thing existed for most of my technician career. It was, hey, you take it to the dealer, you send it to the dealer if it needs
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
That was it. Like before I had gotten involved with some of the Facebook groups, no clue. And I remember one time we had a mobile programmer come out for a Nissan transmission, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing that this guy does. But then, yeah, like you say, meeting all the people, seeing what people can do, the passion and the talent, and that's what inspired me to pursue it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely give credit to those guys that were the first ones out there to try it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And just correct me if I'm wrong. You were working at Firestone for quite some time. Is that where you were at before you made the jump?
Yeah, I mean, so I was at Firestone until I started teaching at the college.
Okay.
And while there was a transition period, so like I was teaching and doing a little bit of Firestone like on the weekends in the summer. And then I left Firestone, and then I would teach and do mobile on the side, and then transition to full mobile. So it was like I never just did one thing. I kind of transition. But yeah, Firestone for I want to say 7 or 8 years, and prior to that, it's just independent shops.
Gotcha. How was the teaching thing? Is that something you think you might do again?
I don't know. Maybe it's way, way, way more work than you would ever imagine, and that is one thing that might keep me away from it. Like,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and there's parts of it that were very fulfilling, and there's really good benefits if you do it for the state and you get into the right position. But it is a tremendous, tremendous amount of work, and the pay is okay. It's not as bad as some people make it out to be, but it's just okay for the amount of work that you have to put in. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe someday, but I like what I'm doing now much better. And I have the potential to do like some teaching, right? Like maybe I could do an event or something like that where I'm not teaching a full 9-month semesters with students and everything. That's a whole different animal where I can do a 4-hour course and still get that fix, right? So maybe I'll do it just in a different form.
Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, it's definitely fulfilling, and met a lot of really cool people. And I mean, I'll say this: the going from technician to a teacher really helped me with my development as far as learning and discipline goes. As far as like when you have to study something or you really have to dive in deep or really understand something, which we do doing what we're doing right now with Diag and programming and all this stuff. But I was kind of just forced to do that as a teacher because you have to understand the stuff really well, like way more than you think you do in order to teach it to somebody else, especially somebody who doesn't know anything. Like you have to be able to, to understand something really well. You have to break it down to like its simplest level. And that's tougher than it sounds. And it takes a lot of work. And so that work that I did, especially in that first year teaching, actually really set me up well to do the sort of thing that I'm doing now. Because if I got to dive in deep to something now, which I do, like I got to figure out a new software that I've never used. Like I've got to do that tomorrow. And having the discipline to like sit down and focus and have a plan. How am I going to get through this? How am I going to figure this out? That's a skill set in itself that like not everybody has, including myself prior to 2017. I really just, I didn't have that. I was great at fixing cars mechanically and pretty good at okay at Diag, but that definitely changed things for me.
Yeah, I've definitely learned the past couple of years. You definitely want to. It helps to have a plan. I mean, even in the Diag stuff, do your preliminary and sit down and figure out where you're going to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, just like asking questions about like, okay, this programming software doesn't work when I do this, or it doesn't work with this module or with this tool, or when I click there. But to ask, well, why? Why not when I do that? Or are you sure that maybe you're just not doing something correctly and it does work that way, but you have to, right click this thing before, or you have to plug this thing in a different way, or, there's hundreds of different examples. That's been a big one for me because I would just kind of button mash my way through things a lot of the time. And through persistence, get to a conclusion or get to a fix one way or another, but to slow down and ask myself like, oh, okay, this doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? What am I missing here? What could I be doing differently? Or what is someone else maybe doing differently? And that's a good skill set too for people to have, is just to slow down and be like, are you sure? Or why are you doing it this way?
Yeah, I think that's huge. It's easy to just get going and just, full steam ahead, and
Yeah.
I would get myself the most of the trouble I get myself into.
Yeah, I'm really good at that. Well, yeah. So, okay. So you're doing mobile, you're doing diagnostics, programming. Is that pretty much it to start out? Or are you doing key stuff too?
I am doing key stuff. I'm pretty much, I kind of just jumped into it. So, with the anticipation, I would have to do key stuff, just knowing that there's sometimes you need more keys than the customer has, or,
Sure.
So I bought a key machine. I went off one of Isaac's recommendations. I was actually looking at the not the Triton. It was an X-Horse product.
Okay.
Which
a Dolphin or something?
Something. I reached out to Isaac and asked him for recommendations. So he recommended the Black Widow key machine, and I've only got to use it a couple times now to cut keys, but it's worked well for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually been surprised the amount of contact I've gotten for people interested in just, adding a remote to their vehicle. It's been kind of interesting, just people, so I slapped some magnets on the side of my car, so that probably doesn't help with the general public calling me, but they've been,
yeah,
a lot of key stuff, really.
Yeah, that is keys can get shady real quick, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I actually I have to go to court in a couple weeks here. I sold keys to a gentleman who owned the vehicle, and he had proof of ownership of the vehicle. So, like, I didn't do anything wrong, but it was just an individual. It wasn't a shop. And I did this like way back in 22. So it's been a while, but the judicial system is slow, and it's been deferred a few different times. But here's what this dude did. So he bought like 2 copies of this key for his Honda Civic. It wasn't even all keys lost. I was just making copies of keys for him, right? Okay, he owns the car. Cool.
Yeah.
He would go and he would have the vehicle who he has spare keys for. He'd keep those spare keys. He'd go sell the vehicle to someone, give them a fake title that he printed off of his laptop, take the money for the car, go away, come back later with a spare key that I made for him, hop in the car and drive away, and he still has the real title for it. And he did that like 3 or 4 times, got caught. And then I got a subpoena in the mail saying I have to go testify on behalf of the state of Minnesota. So
that's fun.
Just to give a reference of why I say keys are shady sometimes.
Yeah.
Be careful who you deal with and vet your customers as much as possible. And we try to do business to business, or at least say, hey, can you vet your customers for us? Before, and not just take any Tom, Dick, or Harry that walks off the street to make keys for their car. But it is a good revenue source for sure. I like doing keys when I can.
And I actually had a couple days ago, an O'Reilly Auto Parts store call me. I don't know the whole story, and if I'm being honest, I suspect the customer wasn't being truthful 100% with them. But so this guy comes into O'Reilly, saying, "Hey, my remote's dead. This was a Nissan, one of the proximity fobs keys. They asked him to change the battery out. So they changed the battery out, and now his fob doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. Okay. None of the nothing. You got to push it up against the button, and it'll start the car, but that's it. So O'Reilly's called me to come, do a key for this guy for him. So I did, and it went well, but it was just. I didn't tell the O'Reilly's people that I was like, I don't know that changing a battery would have killed this guy's remote like that, but right. Yeah, O'Reilly's ended up paying the $300 for him to have a new remote done.
I've had customers where I don't know they open up their key or whatever, and then the little transponder chip falls out, and then it doesn't start their vehicle anymore. So yeah,
anything's possible.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, some of the key, like programming equipment is actually really good for diagnostics too. Like my Key Tool Max that I have now, I don't have an X-Horse key machine in my van anymore, but I kept the Key Tool Max, and I use that thing for diag all the time to see, hey, does the key work? Does the remote work? Yeah. What chip is in here? What frequency is in here? And, does it match what's supposed to be in the vehicle? Because that's what we run into is like, okay, this key doesn't work, or the car doesn't respond to the key, or the key doesn't start the car. Is it the key's fault or the car's fault? And I mean, that tooling is fantastic just for the diagnostic part of stuff. So it's such an overlap in what we do when we get into modules and we get into diag, and immobilizer stuff can obviously immobilize a car. We're going to be involved with it. So you got to be able to test all that stuff and have like a working knowledge of it too. Like understand like what the DST 80 or DST 40 on a Ford, or like it's supposed to be this frequency or this supposed to be this chip in order to, function correctly in the car. That's locksmith stuff essentially, but we got to know it in order to fix them.
Yeah, it is definitely crazy how that overlap there. I mean, before, I've hardly ever dug into too much really immobilizer work, working in the repair shops, that's definitely new for me.
I do the 30-minute learn on GMs, and like as a tech at Firestone, that was the extent of my immobilizer work. Or back in the day, you'd have the resistor pellet in GMs, and the wires would break up in the column. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
I've had a couple where I got my 10 options of resistors there. We'll get this figured out.
I got that chart somewhere of all the different resistor options. I've definitely made some bypasses for those things for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff.
They've advanced a little bit, thankfully. Well, on some vehicles, not the Kia Hyundais, but
yeah, We'll talk about those.
I, I do keys for a used car lot, and they had cameras all over their lots because they're down in the cities where there's a lot of theft, and they block in their lot at night. Like they'll park cars so you can't drive vehicles out unless you're ramming through other vehicles. But this kid runs on the lot, breaks a window on this Kia, and he's not able to get in through the window that he broke. He broke one of the like back windows and he couldn't get in. So he broke another window, and they finally got in. And I guess he was in this Kia because they're watching on the cameras. He was in the Kia for like 3 hours, like from midnight to like 3 a.m. And he never got it started. Well, this Kia was a hybrid push button start vehicle. so they showed me the car when I was there. He like tore apart the clamshell on the steering column and like ripped out the stock for the wipers that's on the right side there. Probably watching this TikTok video of like, where's this ignition switch they're talking about?
Where's the USB go?
Yeah. So, and then finally they saw him like hop out and run away after he couldn't get it. So, they actually thought it was pretty comical. They got insurance and stuff, but yeah.
I heard Kia's like giving people like steering locks or something for the vehicles that didn't have immobilizer or something wild like that.
Yeah. That's a rough one for them, man. Holy cow. You think you're saving a few bucks, and then your cars are known for being stolen because of TikTok.
Yeah, and I mean, the age we live in, if there's a
a lot of dirt bags out there.
Yeah, there's a way to get something for free. People are going to try to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your plans as you start to take off here? Like, what are your goals, or how do you see this progressing for you?
Oh man, good question. I'm winging it, man.
I'm good at that too.
So I definitely have on it. So my goals really for this first year are still a lot of training goals. There's a lot of training events I want to get to.
Okay.
And really to better myself, and then I do have goals as far as just trying to get my name out there, if you will, a little bit. I made a bunch of flyers, and I handed out about half of them. And I still hold on to the other half because I've started getting calls. So, my goal for this year is probably not to pay myself anything, for the first year, and just try to build this business into, get a good foundation.
Yeah. It definitely took a little while to get the business to be, on the profitable side of things. Well, because you're reinvesting, especially the early stages, because you're like, oh, I need this tool. Oh, yeah, I need this tool. Oh, I need this tool. And so it just like anything you make is going back into it. Yeah,
I have two Autel scan tools that I had from working at the shop. So I got my Ultra and I got my 919. And I'm actually got a buddy who I'm going to sell the 919 to and use that to buy some extra other scan tools, to complement kind of what I have. I'm like, I don't need two Autel scan tools. Like that's crazy,
Right.
So,
oh, get one of the immobilizer ones. Those are, if you're doing that stuff, that's
I do have I have was it the IM 506?
Oh, okay.
I think it's the 506 with the
smaller
the XP 400. I believe it's a smaller one.
Is it got the cable to it?
It does.
Okay, yeah, the 508, I think that one is.
Okay, is it 508? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, not that it really matters, but yeah, that one's it's a good tool because they added the diag side of it a few years ago, where it used to just be a mobilizer, but now you can actually use it as a diag tool if you need it, and it's pretty handy. So yeah, we got a couple of those. And
what are your top? I mean, for mobilizer tooling, I mean, you mentioned the Key Tool Max, but I mean, if you were to make a recommendation for that sort of thing.
Oh, it's the Autel 608, the IM 608 for sure. No, there's this whole thing with NASTIF and the scan tool validation. Okay, get your NASTIF credentials, and then you don't have to worry about it. If that's a big issue for you, I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
I've already gotten them, so I'm good there.
It's going to be part of the industry going forward, so deal with it, figure it out. You can say what you want about how they're making the decisions. I don't know. As long as I can still do my job and make money,
I'm
I
right
don't
there
care
with
that
you. It
much.
doesn't bother me one bit.
Yeah, the tool's fantastic. Now they have removed a few things. Like I think Autel's trying to play ball with manufacturers a little bit more than old school Autel is just like, well, we're just going to steal all your stuff. And I think they're trying to be a legitimate company that works with the OEs now. And so like they took away the Toyota all keys lost function. So there's a few things that have dropped out, but still as a whole, what that thing can do, like if you're going to get into module cloning and you're doing keys and even diag stuff, like I don't think there's a better value out there for everything that you're getting. Like you said, you have the XP 400 or whatever it is. Yeah, you can do so much with that as far as like cloning modules and doing immobilizer work on the bench, that it opens that tool up to so many different possibilities. It's crazy what you can do with that thing. So yeah, that's a staple for us for sure. There's a few other ones too. The X Tool Nitro. We have that as kind of like a backup because there's been a handful of stuff. Like you'll find every tool has a hole and something it won't do. And so we'll have backups. And then Nitro has been a really good tool to kind of cover the gaps. Like it'll do those Toyota all keys losts that the Autel doesn't do anymore. Key Tool Max will do some. I use that mainly for key stuff, although it does have some immobilizer programming options if you get the dongle. Trying to think of what else. Those are the main ones. Yeah. There's specialty stuff depending on what you're doing, which is the problem with what we do is like you're going to find like
you can always buy
never
something.
Ending. Yeah. Yeah. There's always another tool that you want. Always. Still like I've got a list of stuff that
I know. I think at these early stages, it's just trying to figure out like you said, the tool that covers the most. Yeah. Like obviously, it's not going to cover everything, but just try to get that 90% covered.
Covers the most, and it's going to be the most profitable for you right now. You know, there's something to be said about being able to say yes to a job, right? Buying a tool that does a job for you that you're not going to see that same job for 2 years. There's something to be said for that because you could get your foot in the door, but at that early stage, you know, when you only have X amount of budget to work with, you've really got to weigh like, okay, you know, I could buy this GM MDI2 and a subscription to GM for a year, and I could go do GMs and I could make X amount of money. It might be a lot of money. And yeah, it's a lot of money up front, but think of what you're going to get back for that. Whereas, okay, I could buy this cloning tool that allow me to do this one Mercedes module that I'm not going to see again. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And I have not always made the best decision on that. I'm usually the one to say, yep, order it, give me that tool. And then I'll spend $2,000 on a tool and it just sits for a long period of time. And I have plenty of tools where I have not made my money back on. It's just, I spent the money, I've got it, that's cool, I can do it, I can say yes. And as you grow, you want to be able to, but yeah, there's a balancing act and kind of you got to weigh return on investment, but it's tough. Yeah. It's tough because you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. And then even just trying to still get a grasp for the market. I can tell you right now, I'm already thinking I'm going to go ahead and jump on a Ford 1 year subscription from the amount of Fords I've been seeing. Like,
that one's easy. Yeah. Every shop should have a Ford subscription. I mean, you break that down, the cost of what you're getting for that.
It's not, it's not that expensive. It's like, they're one of the cheaper ones. I think it's like $950 something odd dollars or something for
it's about $1,000 a year, but you get diag and programming as much as you want in both the old IDS and the new FDRS versions. Like, it's a no-brainer. You can make that back in a month. Even in a normal shop that's not specializing in programming and diag, you could probably make it back in a month on just because of the amount of Fords that are out there and what you can do with the tool. Like, it's a no-brainer. But you got to get a VCM, either 2 or 3, and those are a little tougher to find at the moment. I just ordered another VCM 3, and they are on like a 6-month back order. So
I got a VCM 3.
Nice.
I found one when I ordered mine. Again, I got mine from Isaac, so maybe he's got a
He's got a
stock of them,
stash, I'm
you
sure.
know,
Yeah,
somewhere he's
yeah,
hiding
probably.
away.
That's smart. That's smart.
But yeah, it wasn't. I want to say maybe a month ago I ordered it from him.
Okay.
And I've had that for yeah, a couple weeks now.
Nice. Yeah. Great tool. And you'll find, especially on the newer stuff, the FDRS stuff, that VCM3 is, they don't say it's necessary for anything yet, but it's kind of necessary for some of them. We ran into that with a few of the front camera modules, the IPMAs, like VCM2 ain't going to cut it if you're trying to program those, and they'll surprise you too. You're not even there to program the camera. You're there to program another module, but they, like a lot of makes and models, are doing sequential programming where all of a sudden, hey, I want to update this one. Oh, well, we're also going to update this and this and this. And then all of a sudden you brick the camera and it's a 4-hour recovery. So that's why we ordered another 3, because I had 1 3 and 2 2s, and that's what we were using was the 2s, and we kind of ran into that issue. So now we're trying to arrange it so that all of the FDRS stuff, the newer Ford stuff, gets the VCM3, and then the older stuff doesn't really matter. So that's the fun stuff you get to look forward to.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I did wanted to ask you about was kind of, so I know you were talking a little bit about you had some programming jobs that turned into Diag jobs. And I'm really interested to hear about how you turned, because I've had instances where I go out to program something and I'm like, this doesn't need a programming. It's not going to fix your problem. I offer them the diagnostic, and a lot of what I've been finding is the diagnostic services have been harder for me to sell than I think I originally maybe anticipated.
Yeah, it's definitely a tougher sell, especially up front. Because, I mean, it depends on the level of the shop. Some guys just want to figure it out themselves and can, and that's awesome. Some places can't, and then some places just don't want to. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. The link is in the show notes. They're overwhelmed. They don't want to spend the time. They're not making the tech's not making a ton of money doing CAN bus diagnostics. And so they're happy to pass it off and keep on cranking out struts and ball joints. Yeah. But what I found it was for me is just keep on pushing and asking and get that chance to show them how easy it is for you to do it for them, right? Like, have that skill set, be able to figure it out in an efficient amount of time, right? You knock that thing out in an hour that they've been messing around with for, 4 hours or a couple days. And you're just like, yep, it's this open wire under the, the door trim plate here. That's going to solve your problem. X amount of dollars. And almost across the board, shops have been so much more receptive to Diag once they saw how frictionless it was to just call us to come out and take care of it, right? And I guess that specific situation for me, when I've come in to program something, hey, it's a no-com, hey, you still got the same circuit code, whatever, right? You run into it. I ran into it 4 times yesterday. It's everyone I went to, I'm like, hey man, I can't program your cluster because I can't communicate to it. Or this isn't going to fix your problem. Because I always ask them, like, why are you replacing this module? Oh, we've got a, circuit code for this or whatever. I'm like, I can program it, but that's not going to fix your problem. Do you want me to look into it? And that's been my door into the Diag, because a lot of the times in that situation, the shops are at like the end of their rope, or they've just invested so much time into trying to figure this one out already. They're just like, okay, yeah, just figure it out. So that was my in for Diag in a lot of places, was I was there for programming and then I offered the service. So I don't know if that's been the same reception for you, but I would say definitely keep trying if it hasn't been. Yeah.
And most of the shops I look at, they're just, I mean, they're just kind of, like, hey, why are you offering Diag? We do Diag. We do that. Okay, yeah.
Right. And a lot of shops do, but I don't know, from my experience, there's not a ton of shops out there that are really efficient at it. There are some out there, definitely, but I would say if you looked at all the repair shops that were out there, it's a small percentage that's really good and efficient at diagnostics. Most of them are really good and efficient at repairing vehicles and hanging parts, and that's their specialty. And they're doing the Diag part just because they have to know which part to replace, right? Or it's a repair shop, they're going to have broken cars. Why is my car broken? Right. But, the speed at which we can increase their profitability, like a couple of our biggest shops, they don't even bother looking at the vehicles anymore. They just call us, say, hey, we got 3 vehicles for you, and we'll give them a little bit of a discount if we have multiple cars at one stop. You want like the best mobile advice ever. If you're doing mobile, is like bundle cars, like get more than one car at one stop, and your efficiency will skyrocket. But they just call us out and say, hey, come look at these cars. We haven't even touched them yet. This one's got a check engine light. This one, the customer says it runs rough. This one, they say the battery goes dead. And they've recognized that having us coming out and do that, and then they just keep their show going, alignments and ball joints and tires and brakes and engines and transmissions and stuff. And we're like a piece of that puzzle now for them that has increased their efficiency, and kind of everybody wins. They're not wasting time throwing parts and stuff. They're not dragging their guy down with a 4-hour network diagnostic. They just let us handle it. So, but that all depends on who's running the shop, and there's ego involved, like you say, especially if like, well, yeah, we do that. I have techs that I've, we pay to train, or that are really good at it. Why would I be outsourcing it? So it's not going to be a fit for every place. And that's the thing, is just kind of figuring out where is that good fit for you. But I can almost guarantee you it's out there.
I had one, actually, a used car lot. They called me out for what's supposed to be a Diag. So talking to the guy on the phone, it sounded, he said, hey, we got a, ABS light on in the dash. My guy can't figure it out. Come take a look at it. I was like, sure, I'll come take a look at it. And when I got into the vehicle, started up, the only light on in the dash is the TPMS light. So I put it in reverse, start backing up, ABS light comes on. So I'm like, okay. I immediately, I'm like, it's got a bad sensor. So I go and I just pull up the PIDs for all the wheel speed sensors, and they're all reading fine. So I do a full system scan on this thing, and it's got codes. I mean, no comms with all sorts of stuff. And I just got digging into it a little bit and finding like green crusties in connectors. And I had to call it. I told the guy, listen, man, this is I probably undercharged this one. This is going to be, I started asking questions. There was things that were just odd. Well, he finally tells me that, hey, this was a flood vehicle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you always get that information afterwards.
So, I was like, okay, and I gave him what I feel was a fair approach to get his problem solved, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a vehicle like this is going to have more than one problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But needless to say, I guess he won't be a customer of mine. He wasn't, he wasn't It wasn't about this, but
Yeah, it definitely sucks. I've had customers where, you come in and you're the hero and it just happens to be an easy one for you, or maybe you've dealt with that before, so you make it look like, oh, I knew, I just go right to the problem, and that's a win, right? And that shop loves you, and well, they might think every car is like that, which can be in its own problem. But then you have these ones where it's the first impression with a shop and you get this just ass kicker. And those are out there waiting for you. That's part of the gig here. I still get them every day. And that sucks when you get one first thing with a new shop. I hate that. I've been there, man, because that's tough to bounce back from, because they think, oh, okay, well, this guy's going to struggle and take 4 hours to figure out everything I send him. I'll just do that. I can do the same thing. But unfortunately, that is the world that that we exist in. I've got some right now, man, that I'm just like at my wit's end trying to sort things out and figure out what's going on with them.
How do you deal with that if you schedule for a vehicle, an hour block time, and it takes longer than that? I mean, how do you?
We leave some flexibility in the schedule every day. We do an hour. Okay, so if it's multiple cars, we'll change it. Depending on the job, we might change it. But generally speaking, we give an hour at each stop. And, within that hour, our goal obviously is to maybe figure out what's wrong with the car. And a lot of times we do. But sometimes it's to decide, like, okay, what's the direction here? What maybe do we need to research? And then we'll do that and come back to it. We'll talk to the customer and see, but we give a little bit of wiggle room so that at least 1 or 2 jobs a day, we can spend a little extra time and we'll be okay with the schedule, right? There's that buffer. Like, we don't pack it outside of some specific days where it's really busy, like this week. We don't pack the schedule so there's no room for error. We try to give it just that little bit of extra. So you're almost always going to have a job every day that's going to take a little bit more, and then okay, I can spend that extra half hour, 45 minutes on it if I feel like I'm close, and I can move to it. But then you do get those ones where it's like, 3-4 trips to figure it out, and that sucks for sure, because then for me, the way I've got to weigh it is like, okay, this is a very difficult problem, and I want to charge appropriate for it. But then what part of it is also like, hey, it's my own ignorance on this particular vehicle or issue or problem. How much can I charge? And we try to balance that. We do. We try to be honest about like, this one's a learning one for us. We're going to charge X amount. It did take more time, but at least we'll be better prepared next time. And that can definitely be a tough one. It can be a tough one when you're a one-man show too, right? We now have the flexibility of multiple people, and we can kind of move stuff around. And okay, Sean's taking longer on this one. Let's send Steve over here. Or Andrew's moving through his day really fast. Okay, let's have him help out over there. But when you're a one-man show, one car can ruin your whole day, and then everything else. So I think what's best there, in my opinion, is just having that time point where you're just like, okay, I'm going to cut this off here, right? And move on to if you've got other things to get to those other things, talk to the person, say, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I know so far. Here's what I'd like to do, but I need to do a little bit of research. And you do that research, and that very often can help you. You reach out to some friends that very often can help you. And then sometimes just stepping away from it for a little while is the answer. I mean, I'm sure you found that as a tech too. It's just like walking away from that thing for a little bit, having some lunch, coming back to it, and it just like, oh, that part fits now.
It's funny how that works. It just fell right into place.
Yep. I remember a timing belt that I was doing. I think it was on a Subaru, one of the 4-cam ones, and I didn't have the special tools, and I'm just getting my ass kicked by this thing for like 2 hours trying to get everything lined up, and one of the stupid cams was always off. And I went to lunch. I came back and right in there, no problem. Like,
yep.
What the hell? Yep. So a lot of it's mindset.
Yeah.
You
For
start
me,
getting frustrated. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, for me, I'm stubborn, so it's like I get my head in something. I have a hard. That's my own fault. I have a hard time pulling myself away from something sometimes.
Well, yeah, if you feel like you're on the right track, especially, right? Like
Yeah.
I know that I'm getting there. I know that I can find this problem. It's happening right now. Yeah, I'll keep pushing through something when I can smell that I'm on the right track, and then
Yeah.
sometimes that eats up some time in the day that I didn't allot for. But that's it. In time management, I mean, I think it's always been a skill set of a technician, especially if you're flat rate, to like really be conscious of the time you're spending on things and how to be efficient and how not to waste time. But yeah, when you're self-employed, even more so, because like you want to get all these things done so you get paid, but you're also trying to keep customers happy as well. And if you've made a promise to somebody that, hey, I'm going to be here at this time and take care of this for you, you want to try to meet that. And all of a sudden, GM server is down and you forgot your hotspot at home, and like that's the sort of stuff that happens, and so
My first day out, I left one of my it was just a case. I was storing some of my pass-through devices and a couple laptops in.
yeah.
I lost it. I don't know where it went. Thankfully, I was going nuts trying to remember what all was in it, and I guess I pulled everything out of it because I've accounted for pretty much everything except for a notebook I had that I had written a ton of notes in, though, and that kills me because it was still
bummer.
it was a huge resource for me. But
Yeah.
like, man, that's what this is gonna be like.
I was definitely forgetful, and still sometimes I've gotten better about it, and like we printed off laminated sheets of like a checklist in the van to be like, hey, before you leave the job site, make sure you have all these things. And like we have a rule of like, you do not put customer keys in your pocket, like in your jacket pocket or your hoodie pocket. You keep them in your hand or you keep them in the vehicle. And then when you're done, you hand them to someone. That's like our rule for keys, because that's the worst. Is like you drove off and you still have the keys with you in your vehicle, and now you've got to go back. You got to backtrack to get the key back to that place, and it's such a waste of time.
And it's such an easy thing to do too, right? Just don't even think about
especially
it.
with the push button start, where you're not actually turning a blade. It's so easy in the wintertime. We got our jackets on. So easy to put a key in your pocket. I mean, or put it in the van, like our vans too. Like I've done both of those things. So like I like make sure like I hold on to that stupid key. Or if they have a ticket bag, I'll keep the key in the ticket bag, or obviously in the vehicle too. But yeah, I try to lock up vehicles when I'm done. So hand the key to someone so that when they call too, because I've had shops lose keys and then blame it on us. And I'm like, hey man, I handed that to John. That's our process. We handed it to him. I don't know what you did with the key. So, yeah, little stuff like that eats up unnecessary time. Processes are huge, right? And I would definitely recommend like jotting the stuff down. Like you'll know your processes, but maybe someday you do want to hire somebody. It's really good to have that stuff in writing. You can be like, here's what I do. Here's what I would like to see you do as well. And we try to document that stuff as much as we can. And it's always evolving and changing and stuff like that. But processes are huge.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I do have a couple laminated sheets. I just scribbled some, tried to make myself a kind of a checklist of, especially for the programming stuff, just of reminding myself of what to take photos of, hey,
Yeah.
take,
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but I'm doing everything pretty much digital. So
Yep.
I have to just attach, I attach the photos to the work order, and then it gets converted into the invoice. And there has been a time where I forgot to take those photos, and if I submit the invoice and then try to go back, and the system I'm using, it's a pain in the butt, and I'm just,
Yeah.
I have an invoice now I don't have photos attached to that I probably need to email the guy the photos, but
Pre-scan, post-scan on everything you do,
Yeah.
especially programming, because whether you think the shop trust you or is your friend or not, once they have a problem that they don't want to or can't deal with, and then had your hands on it, they will try to use you as an out. If you don't have the backing to say, hey, yeah, that was there before I started. I had a shop with a friend. I used to work with this guy at Firestone. Like, I considered him a friend and a decent guy, and he was ready to like come after us for this purge circuit code in this car, but luckily we had a pre-scan. I was like, hey man, look, it's in the pre-scan. Look at the timestamp, look at the software. Like, that was not us. He was convinced that we somehow caused the purge circuit code in his new PCM. And I mean, obviously, like, I explained to him, like, well, that's not how it works. But I was like, look, there's the pre-scan, and he had nothing more to go on, and stopped the discussion. But had we not had that pre-scan, I could tell by the how he was pursuing it that he was not going to let it go until we, I don't know, solved the problem for him. Like, obviously, he was saying the programming was wrong. I'm like, well, the programming is not going to change that. But that's the other trouble, is like, you quite often dealing with people that don't fully understand exactly what is or isn't happening when you're out there to change software or something like that. There's a situation where you ask yourself, well, could I have caused that problem? And sometimes maybe the answer is yes, but then there's a lot of situations where, hey, it just didn't fix the problem they were hoping it did, and now you're involved.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had a similar one. It was programming for a Ford. They replaced they didn't do the whole steering column. They did. They called me to reprogram the power steering control module because they replaced the torque angle sensor.
Mm-hmm.
So I get in and I turn the key on this thing, and the steering wheel just all the way to the left. It was I'm pretty sure it was a Ford. Yeah, I don't remember the model. I told the guy, programming's probably not gonna fix this one. You guys probably need to put a steering column in it more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me to go ahead with the programming, so I did, and of course it didn't fix it.
Yep. Yeah, I try to give people fair warning. Especially if I like the shop, if they're nice people and they do, business with us and friendly and all that, I'll be like, hey, just so you know, I don't think this is gonna fix your circuit code for your wheel speed sensor. But hey, I give them what they want. And there are certain shops I just, okay, that's what you want? Sure, I'll hit the button. That'll be X amount of dollars, please. Oh, but the light's still on. Okay, we can set up a diag for a couple days from now if you'd like. Yeah, it's, you can lead a horse to water, but some places get in their mind that, like, once they've moved beyond their willingness or capacity to solve a problem, well, it has to be the computer, that's causing this. And, it's been difficult to explain that to certain individuals.
Yeah. The ones who get it, and then the ones who don't, they really don't.
Mm-hmm. It's still better than dealing with the general public, in my opinion, because at least a good portion of the people we do with do get it. Like, they understand when we're trying to track down this intermittent CAN bus issue. Like, he gets it. He's like, I understand, man, that, like, this is, I hate intermittent problems. Yeah, me too. And whereas maybe your general person just driving a car isn't going to understand how crazy and daunting of a challenge that is to track down an intermittent network issue on a fully loaded Cadillac Escalade. Good luck. It's not, it happens like once a week. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just hop in and find it. No problem.
The computer will tell you what's wrong with it. Right?
Yeah, right. You just plug it in. Oh, well, every module says there's no communication on this bus. Okay, let me start. Okay, well, let's just replace every module. We'll start with that.
How do you? How do you deal with the general public? I'm sure your vans your vans wrapped in.
Nope.
No, they're okay.
Inconspicuous, and that was
okay.
intentional. Yeah. I didn't want a whole lot of like, our shop has no logo or writing on it, and we don't have anything on the vans. We're actually just now working on a website. But we haven't had a website. Like, you can Google us, but there's not a whole lot of stuff that comes up. It's just been word of mouth. So our biggest general public customer is Keys, that we do stuff for. And we do get calls for like module programming, but boy, we try to avoid it because it's like the issues that we deal with shops when it comes to programming times 100, because they've replaced it with some, used module that's not even close to correct, and it's not going to fix their problem. And you're going to their house where it's outside and the battery's been dead for 6 months. And yeah, it is. And so like the general public, quite often I find it, and maybe shops deal with this all day long, but they're kind of like shell shocked on the cost of things too. They're like, well, it's that much just to put some software in a module? Yeah, sorry, sir. That's what it is. And then when you do that and it doesn't fix the issue that they thought it would, then they're all kinds of butthurt about it. And like, sorry, man. So we try to avoid those situations because it's just a pain in the ass. It's not profitable.
Yeah, no, I need to. I do, man, and I have been getting some calls from the general public type people, and it's
when you first starting, it's like
doing, but
hey, that's work, right? Like when you're first starting out, it's work, it's experience. I'd be lying if I said I didn't use jobs like that to learn, right? Because I'm just like, well, if I screw this thing up, it's not the end of the world. It's not, this isn't going to be, a huge client for me down the road. Just, Joe Schmo with his Dodge Avenger. I could spend some time screwing around on this thing, trying to learn something on how to do this or avoid this in the future. And yeah, I've used those. That's for sure.
Good. It's not going to be a long-term client, right?
Sometimes you're just like, hey, is this the body shop down the street that I'm going to be getting 3 or 4 ADAS jobs from a week? Or is this just dude that I'm never going to see again with his old rusted out pile of garbage? You can avoid it, but I've used those to learn for sure. Diagan programming. Right. Especially with the used stuff. And that is one thing. Like I've had some people call with some strange requests for like, hey, can I put a used module in the blank, but the module's from a car that has a different drivetrain and engine. And and I swapped in 2 other modules. And I'm like, I wonder if we could do that. Like the learning that goes into like actually accomplishing that does transfer into the future. And so then you can say when the guy, at the shop calls, hey, can we do a used one? We can. It's just going to cost you a little extra, but we know what to do. Sometimes you got to waste some time to figure all that stuff out.
That's good.
Yeah. Used modules get tricky, and that's where that spending on tools kind of can go out of control too, because you're cloning and...
Yeah, I haven't got the chance to tinker with too much of the cloning stuff. I'm probably just going to go tear a bunch of modules out of some junkyard vehicles, honestly, and some practice on it that way. But
start with some just basic EEPROM stuff, swapping a few chips and doing that stuff, and then you can grow. But like I said, with that Autel and that XP Pro, like you can dive pretty far into it just with that, and kind of figure out your boundaries and figure out, okay, well, it'd be nice to have this tool because I see these things all the time. It depends on your market and the vehicles that you're working on. And I talk to people that'll see like one brand or one problem of vehicle all the time. I never see it. I don't have the tool. I have no need for it. And then vice versa. Like I see certain things on a very regular basis. So it makes sense for me to buy this particular cloning tool because I'm going to use it all day long.
Yeah, I got an old GM pickup truck in my driveway. I might be perfect for learning some cloning on that thing.
Experimentation. Yeah. Well, it's good to have you bricked a module yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But there's always a first time for everything.
It will happen eventually. So, it's almost good to have something where you don't care if it breaks and see what it's going to take to actually break it, right? Like, what can I get away with and still program this module? How low can the battery voltage be? Can I do it while it's running? What happens if I unplug this USB cable at this point in the programming? I mean, and I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not. Like, knowing where those boundaries are is actually, it's a good thing for you to do if you're going to do it all day long. But I probably take a few more risks than I probably should sometimes. So.
Yeah, maybe I'll give this a couple more weeks and before I start taking too many more risks.
Yeah, right.
How do you, how do you find yourself? I mean, obviously this week for you has just been crazy busy.
Yeah.
How do you do that work-life balance thing? You know, I mean, I think I'm busier now, honestly, than I was working the shop, just between, coming home and trying to finish up, the office stuff. And
you will be, for sure. Yeah, it's self-employment. What do they say? It's the only people that'll work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I am not good at the work-life balance. I have put some effort into being better at it. But I definitely am imbalanced in that. Yeah. My problem is I really like it. I really do enjoy it. It's not only my career, but it's my passion and my hobby. And so it's easy to just pour a lot of time into it. But at the same time, I do recognize like some weeks, like this week being one of them, where it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm just working like from the time I get up to the time I go to bed, and that's it. And, kind of relaxing at night. Like, I'm not like intensely working. Maybe I'm watching some TV or hanging out with a girlfriend, but girlfriend's out of town this week. So it's just, there's modules all over the place and just going crazy with it. But it's, it definitely dominates. And I do put some work into like, hey, okay, it's the weekend. I need to just put this stuff away and go enjoy whatever I'm doing. And yeah, so I struggle with that.
Yeah, that is hard. I know.
I think for me, I don't know. It's definitely worth it though. The return you get out of it is worth the effort that you put in if you like doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big change from, doing brake pads and stuff, but always, for me, it's always been my passion.
I don't think I go back to the repair world.
No, even if I don't make it doing this, I don't think I'll go back to the repair world.
Yeah, I thought about that. Like, okay, I stopped doing this. Would you go back to working in a shop? I don't think so. I don't think I could. I don't think I'd do it. Except I'll do some repair, on the vans or my own vehicle every once in a while, and I'm like, I don't want to do this full time anymore. I mean, obviously the age in your body, but I just I don't enjoy that like I used to. So
I think if this didn't pan out, I'd still end up doing something, probably try to go more IT or something,
Yeah, right. I probably could get some sort of job in software, IT, whatever.
With all the problems you got to figure out.
Yeah, well, I know way more about computers and Windows and registries and stuff like that than I ever did prior to getting into programming. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
just setting up all these several laptops,
Yeah, right. Laptops and softwares and, remoting into computers and USB sharing and like, I didn't know any of that crap even existed before this. So it's I'm not the one to coin this phrase, but it's just learning on steroids when you're doing this stuff too. Like the amount of knowledge that, you're just drinking from that fire hose. So you just, especially in those first few years, it's that hockey stick graph and you just keep going from there. So that part of it's really cool is it's a learning experience like none other. I go to shops and people will say like, well, how do you know all of this stuff, or how do you manage all of this stuff? And I mean, I'm learning on the fly a lot of the time, but it's going out and doing it every single day. Like I'll say to the guy at the shop, I'm like, hey, you do a diag, if you're lucky, one a day, maybe once a week. that really challenges you. Like I've got 5 of them today that challenge me. And so it's just, hey, you put in that time consistently, you're going to grow. It's just, there's no way you're not going to.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely put ourselves in a spot to take everyone's headaches on ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll make your problem my problem. Let's go.
Yeah, that's good. But definitely takes a special kind of individual, I guess, to want to sign up for it. But
sadistic, glutton for punishment. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Uh-huh. No, it's good though. It's good for anybody to do something that really challenges you. I couldn't imagine having a monotonous job where I just knew what I was going to do every day and I did the same thing, or it was just unsurprising and rarely challenged. Like I'd be so bored.
Yeah. Like there's a couple of programming events I know in my head of that I just hear people talking about, being a pain in the butt. And I guess like some of the Nissan stuff. And so I'm like, man, I really can't, I'm dreading having to do one of those, but at the same time, like, I can't wait to do one so I can just get it over with.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of that stuff is true. Like, once you do it, you're like, oh, this ain't that bad. Like, Nissans really aren't that bad. There's a lot of, there's some ways you can screw it up, but Nissans aren't too bad. And you hear that. Right. Yeah. Like, once you figure it out, though, like, hey, I just know where the repro programming folder is. I know how to search it for the file. I remember that same feeling of like, what's a DAT file? What's a CSV? Why is there? Oh, and there's one that has an extra one in a 107 folder. But like those things where you're just repetitive. Like you don't even think about it anymore. It's just, yeah, exactly. And that's true of most stuff. You get through it once, and then the next time it's like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. Intermittents never get any easier, but that's probably the one exception.
Yeah, because they're always working perfect when you're time to look at them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I had one. We try to avoid them, but the ones we get sucked into are the ones where the customer's like, "Yep, it's doing it right now," and they're not lying, but we get there and now it's not, and then we go for like a 10-mile test drive. He's like, "I know it's going to act up. It's going to act up." Didn't act up, and I'm just like, sorry, man, I've got the magic touch. I'm sure they'll do it once I leave. So,
do you ever leave your any of your clients with like any sort of way of doing data logging? For any of those?
I haven't. I've given them some instruction of like, hey, check this with your scan tool, or you could look at that thing. I haven't really done the flight recorder type of thing yet. There might be specific, situations where, that could be useful. I had one, we had a Nissan that was blowing a fuse under hood, and it was very random. Like it would take a week to do it. And it fed a huge circuit, like a whole branch of circuits under the hood that went to various components. And, we did our visual best we could. Couldn't duplicate it. It wouldn't blow this fuse, but eventually it would, and it would keep the engine from running once it blew. So it was a problem. And so I ended up installing, I broke apart the circuit and I installed separate fuses on each leg. That took some time, but it was way faster than driving it around for a week waiting for this stupid fuse to pop.
Yeah.
And so then we just drove it until it popped, and then we knew what leg it was, and then we were able to go into the harness and find where the short was occurring. So we did that. Like there's unique circumstances where we might set it up, but I found if you want to be productive, avoid intermittence as often as you can. As soon as the customer says his intermittent, says, hey, I'm sorry. I'm like, unless you have a full day and you got nothing else to do, say like, hey man, I'm sorry. We just don't have the time to do that unless it acts up within this period of time. Or if you get into it, just recognize it right away and say, hey man, this is intermittent. I've got to charge by the hour and I may not have an answer for you concrete if this doesn't act up. Do you want to pay me for that? And then it's on the customer. So I just get bored. Like driving around a vehicle, just waiting for it to act up, just bores the snot out of me.
I tell you, sometimes I feel like all my do a lot of driving, you know. I mean, right now, you know, I might have a shop. My first call might be, you know, 30 miles from my second call. It's like,
yeah, right. Yeah, the
yeah,
drive time's a killer. Do you guys get snow down there?
not a whole lot.
Okay. That's coming for us too, and that's
Yeah.
a big productivity killer for us too.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure
we're
that is. When I mean, I was telling you it was cold today, and it was probably, you know, 45, 50 degrees, you know, so I'm sure that's for you, that's probably warm.
well, yeah, it's still doable, but yeah, as soon as it gets below freezing, all the cars got to be inside for Diag. We're not doing that stuff outside.
Yeah.
Programming, okay, we'll do the programming outside. That's not the end of the world, and I have some extension cables you can use and stuff like that. But yeah, if it's below freezing, we're getting that thing inside. And like I said, the multiple cars at one stop is a huge productivity booster because of the drive time. Like if you think of 3 cars, I've got 20 minutes in between each stop, right? You're 40 minutes to an hour of extra time, whether if you could just had them at one stop, you know, you've increased your productivity by a ton. So we encourage our customers to do that, and I'm making actually more of a push for it in the near future by kind of offering a little discount of, hey, if you do this, we'll give you X percentage off if you can group cars together.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, you know what I mean? It saves everybody, you know, on the travel costs and programming costs. Yeah, that's good.
For sure. So we're going to be working on that, but yeah, man. Well, I'm excited for you.
Hey, I appreciate it.
It's a fun time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and appreciate you letting me come pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on or ask about before we wrap her up?
I'm good. Like I said, I just wanted some organic conversation with someone who I know has been doing it, and
yeah, like I said, I'm still learning this every day and growing and talking to people that can help me, and right, people that are ahead of me or just doing cool stuff. And yeah, that's the other thing, and I've said it probably way too many times, but like find that network of people that you can ask questions, interact with. It's huge.
Yeah.
Because there's just too much for one person to know, for sure. And so get some friends, get some contacts. Like, I mean, obviously I can offer you some advice, but you know, get out to those training events and make some good contacts. And that's a big support as you venture into this.
Yeah, 100%. I've been lucky enough to get in to a couple of good groups with some guys who are definitely a lot smarter than myself. So, you know, just reading through their messages at the end of the night.
It's always good to be the dumbest person in the room. I recently was feeling that when I was in Vegas hanging out with a group of individuals. I'm like, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm that guy, but I'm happy about that because it raises your bar automatically by being around those people.
And
so.
you're just sucking all the knowledge, you know? Just be a sponge.
Yep, exactly. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for spending the time with me. I definitely appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, Sean, I appreciate it too. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much, Shane, for spending the time with me. Really appreciate it. Also like to say thank you to everybody out there for listening and all the feedback I get about the show. Yeah, really, thank you so much. I do appreciate everybody that I talk to. Apologize if I don't get to everyone in the speediest manner, but I do try to reach out to everybody that sends an email or a message on Facebook. Those are the 2 best ways to get hold of me. If you're interested, check the show notes for more details. Otherwise, let's all get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.
Yeah.